To philosophy. This video is an introduction to the course, covers this first topic. So philosophy is about asking questions, providing an answer to those questions, and evaluating those answers. So it's really about considering fundamental issues and evaluating the reasons offered in support of particular conclusions as answers to these fundamental issues. Typically, philosophy is broken into 4 subfields, and these are listed in no particular order, by the way. So they might be different. They might be listed in a different order in your reading. So we have logic, metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics, value theory. Okay, so logic is about how propositions, which are statements that could be true or false, hang together in the right sort of way to support conclusions. It's about maybe how the content of propositions relate to each other, and it's sort of how our minds actually operate when we say that we're reasoning. So that's what logic is about. And we're going to cover a little bit of this because it's operating in the background of a lot of what we do. But if you're interested in learning more about logic, we do offer a course in it. So I'm just going to give you guys a brief kind of background, basic concepts of reasoning, stuff that will help you understand what's going on. But it's not the main focus of this course. So it's how propositions hang together, and a little bit of a statement about how our brains actually reason towards stuff. Metaphysics. Meta means beyond, and then we know what physics means, world, physical world. So metaphysics is taken from a title of one of Aristotle's texts called Metaphysics. It was published after physics, and it's about what's in the universe and what those things are like. So this includes questions like, what are we like? Does God exist? What's his nature? How does language work? How do objects look the way they look to us? And does that mean that's what they look like when we're not looking at them? So what's in the universe and what those things are like. Epistemology has to do with knowledge, belief, things like that. It's from the Greek root episte, meaning knowledge, study of knowledge. So if I say something like, how do you know? Right, that's an epistemic question. If I say, what's a justification? It's an epistemic question. If I say, how do you know you can trust somebody's testimony? That's also a justification. That's also about epistemology. So epistemology is very broad, just like metaphysics, and it covers all sorts of topics. One of the ones that we'll cover initially in this course has to do with skepticism. Ethics, value theory, just have to do with what we ought to value and what we ought to do given what we value. This is also a broad subject, so it includes not just ethics and morality, but stuff like aesthetics, which is the subject that looks at art and things we find beautiful and tries to understand them a little bit better. So this could be questions quite literally like, what is art? But it also includes, the study of games and sports. On the ethics side, we'll cover some of this, and this is specifically, what moral principles direct our action, what ought we do, and where do these moral principles come from? And one thing I want to stress is that these are a good way of thinking of the field, but they're not hard and fast distinctions. So, for instance, when we're talking about how language works in metaphysics, we might ask, if I say that dog over there, right, how do we know what we're referring to? So that's a metaphysics question. But when I say something like, is the present king of France bald? That sounds like is that a true or false sentence? It sounds a little bit like epistemology, but it's also a heavily logic-based question. So you have logic, metaphysics, epistemology, all in this question about like, how does our language work, right? And you also get a lot of overlaps with ethics and value theory. So if I say we're a certain type of creature, and that means that we know certain types, that we can only know certain types of things, and because of this type of creature we have certain ethical responsibilities and obligations, and then I use logic to support that, and maybe there's only a certain way that our brains can work logically. Okay, well, now we're seeing that these fields overlap. I also want to point out that philosophy covers a lot of topics. So, for instance, economics started as a philosophical discipline. The law and math and philosophy kind of grew up together. And there's a philosophy of just about anything you can put your mind to. And once the field is established as sufficiently different, well, philosophers, we keep the fundamental questions, and then the field branches off. So if we look at, for instance, physics, there's a philosophy of physics. And the questions that philosophers ask are going to be more fundamental than the sort of applied questions that the physicists are going to ask. So if we just look at the example of fracking, an engineer might ask, like, all right, how do we get the oil or the natural gas out of these small deposits? Whereas a philosopher will ask, should we? Who's the stakeholders? Who gets harmed? Who benefits? Are these the sort of actions that are aligned with things that we value both short-term and long-term? And that's the sort of distinction that you can make with philosophy versus other disciplines. It's not that one is more important than the other. We're just doing different jobs. And you can make a philosophy or find a philosophy of anything you're interested in. Philosophy of horror, philosophy of anime, philosophy of sports, philosophy of art. I study conspiracy theories, for instance, right? So there's a philosophy of conspiracy theories and theories, right? It's a huge field. If you can imagine there being questions about what it means for something to exist, how it affects us, whether or not we should value it, these sort of basic fundamental questions, if you can imagine asking those questions about a particular topic, philosophy is going to deal with it. And I hope that you find something enjoyable in the sorts of topics we're going to be engaging with throughout the rest of the semester.